In today's episode, we will explore how did the Russian USSR arise and how did it fall? The history of the Soviet Union in 13 minutes. Welcome to the Fact Hunter channel. Feel free to subscribe to the channel and watch our videos. The Soviet Union, officially known as the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR, was one of the most powerful and influential entities of the 20th century. Its story is one of revolution, ambition, and ideological conflict, but also of repression, economic challenges, and eventual collapse. This video condenses the history of the USSR, from its revolutionary beginnings to its dissolution, into an engaging 13-minute journey. The birth of the Soviet Union, revolution and civil war. The USSR's origins trace back to the Russian Revolution of 1917, a time of immense social and political upheaval. Discontent with Tsar Nicholas II's rule, exacerbated by the toll of World War I, led to the February Revolution, which saw the abdication of the Tsar and the establishment of a provisional government. However, continued unrest set the stage for the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, to seize power in the October Revolution. Promising peace, land, and bread, the Bolsheviks gained support from a weary populace. The subsequent Russian Civil War, 1918 to 1921, pitted the Red Army against the anti-communist White Army. The Bolsheviks emerged victorious, consolidating control and establishing the USSR in 1922. Initially, the Union comprised 4 republics: Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, and Transcaucasia. Lenin's leadership was marked by efforts to rebuild a nation devastated by war and establish a Marxist-Leninist state. This was the foundation of an ambitious experiment to create a classless society based on socialist principles, which resonated far beyond Soviet borders. Stalin's rule, industrialization and repression. After Lenin's death in 1924, Joseph Stalin rose to power, ushering in a period of rapid industrialization and agricultural collectivization. His 5-year plans transformed the USSR into a global superpower, focusing on heavy industry and infrastructure. By mobilizing vast resources, the Soviet Union built factories, dams, and railroads at an unprecedented pace, turning the country into an industrial powerhouse capable of competing with Western economies. However, these achievements came at a tremendous human cost. Collectivization led to widespread famine, particularly in Ukraine, where the Holodomor claimed millions of lives. Entire villages were decimated, and the human suffering was immense. Stalin's paranoia fueled purges and mass repression, with millions imprisoned or executed. The Great Purge eliminated perceived enemies of the state, including high-ranking officials, military leaders, and ordinary citizens, creating a climate of fear that permeated society. Despite these brutal policies, Stalin's leadership was pivotal during World War II. The Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany, achieved at a staggering cost of over 20 million lives, solidified its status as a superpower. The post-war period saw the USSR extend its influence over Eastern Europe, establishing a buffer zone of communist satellite states. The Iron Curtain divided Europe, setting the stage for decades of ideological conflict. The Cold War era, superpower rivalry. In the aftermath of World War II, the Soviet Union and the United States emerged as global superpowers, locked in a decades-long ideological and geopolitical struggle known as the Cold War. The USSR promoted communism, while the US championed capitalism and democracy. This rivalry shaped global events, from the Berlin blockade and the Korean War to the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Vietnam War. The Soviet Union heavily invested in military and technological advancements to compete with the West. The space race became a symbol of this competition, with the USSR achieving early milestones such as launching Sputnik, the first artificial satellite, and sending Yuri Gagarin, the first human, into space. These achievements showcased the USSR's scientific capabilities and bolstered national pride. However, the Soviet Union's focus on military spending and heavy industry often came at the expense of consumer goods and living standards. By the 1970s, the country faced growing economic challenges, with inefficiencies in centralized planning leading to shortages and stagnation. Corruption and mismanagement further eroded public confidence, while dissent simmered among intellectuals and ethnic minorities. Economic challenges and the road to collapse. By the late 1970s, cracks in the Soviet system were becoming increasingly apparent. Centralized planning, while effective in mobilizing resources for large-scale projects, struggled to adapt to changing economic realities. The rigid bureaucracy stifled innovation, and the emphasis on quantity over quality left Soviet industries lagging behind their Western counterparts. Meanwhile, the USSR's vast military expenditures drained resources that could have been used to improve living conditions for its citizens. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev became the General Secretary of the Communist Party, introducing ambitious reforms under perestroika, restructuring, and glasnost, openness. Perestroika aimed to revitalize the economy by introducing market-oriented reforms, while glasnost allowed greater freedom of speech and transparency. For the first time, Soviet citizens openly discussed previously taboo subjects, such as government corruption, environmental disasters, and historical injustices. These reforms, though well-intentioned, accelerated the USSR's unraveling. Economic restructuring led to widespread disruptions, with factories closing and unemployment rising. Glasnost exposed the regime's flaws, further undermining its legitimacy. Ethnic tensions flared as republics demanded greater autonomy or outright independence. The Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania welled the way, inspiring others to follow suit. The Soviet government's inability to maintain control became evident in the face of growing unrest. The Chernobyl nuclear disaster in 1986, initially covered up by Soviet authorities, further eroded public trust. Gorbachev's reluctance to use force to suppress dissent signaled a weakening of central authority, and the economy spiraled into crisis, with hyperinflation and widespread shortages. The fall of the Soviet Union. The late 1980s and early 1990s saw the rapid disintegration of the USSR. Key events included the revolutions of 1989, which ended communist rule in Eastern Europe, and the failed August 1991 coup by hardline communists. The coup, intended to restore Soviet authority, had the opposite effect, galvanizing opposition and accelerating the push for independence among republics. By December 1991, most Soviet republics had declared independence. On December 25, 1991, Gorbachev resigned as president, and the Soviet Union officially dissolved, leaving 15 independent nations in its wake. Russia, under Boris Yeltsin, emerged as the largest successor state, embarking on a challenging transition to a market economy and democratic governance. The dissolution marked the end of the Cold War and the beginning of a new geopolitical era. Legacy of the Soviet Union. The USSR's legacy is complex and multifaceted. It was a superpower that shaped the 20th century, achieving remarkable milestones in science, industry, and global influence. Its role in defeating Nazi Germany and pioneering space exploration remains a source of pride for many. However, its history is also marked by repression, economic hardship, and human suffering. The Soviet Union's collapse reshaped global geopolitics, ending the Cold War and leaving the US as the sole superpower. For many in the former Soviet states, independence brought both opportunities and challenges. While some countries, such as the Baltic states, embraced democratic reforms and economic growth, others faced political instability, corruption, and economic turmoil. The transition from a planned economy to a market economy was particularly difficult, with widespread poverty and inequality emerging in the post-Soviet space. Today, the memory of the Soviet Union remains contested. Some view it as a failed experiment in communism. Others see it as a period of strength and influence. In Russia, nostalgia for the Soviet era has been fueled by a sense of lost prestige and economic difficulties. This sentiment has been leveraged by political leaders, including Vladimir Putin, to promote a narrative of national resilience and greatness. Conclusion. Lessons from history. The rise and fall of the Soviet Union is a testament to the interplay of ambition, ideology, and systemic challenges. It highlights the importance of adaptability, transparency, and responsiveness in governance. As we reflect on its history, we gain insight into the forces that continue to shape global politics and the enduring consequences of decisions made on the world stage. The Soviet Union's story serves as both a cautionary tale and a source of inspiration. It reminds us of the potential for human achievement and the dangers of unchecked power. By studying its history, we can better understand the complexities of our modern world and the lessons that remain relevant today. Through this lens, the Soviet Union remains not just a historical entity, but a profound case study in the rise and fall of empires, and its lessons resonate far beyond its borders. Its history serves as a reminder that power, no matter how vast, is never permanent, and that societies must evolve or risk disintegration. More than 3 decades after its collapse, the world continues to grapple with the legacy of the Soviet Union. Its history offers enduring lessons about the fragility of even the most formidable states and the resilience of people striving for freedom and change. As new global challenges arise, understanding the past becomes ever more essential in guiding us toward a more informed and equitable future. The Soviet Union's rise and fall is not merely a story of one nation, but a universal narrative about the human condition, the struggle for progress, and the relentless pursuit of ideals that shape our shared destiny.